Nyongji Jembor Zordo Nimi Zongzong Monum Chimbor Ngabjada Bakar Tarman Santo Shirmar Doktomba Tikji Janla Kisham Zong Nechenru Serni Jangal Jangur Tikji Shanla Jigme Penzo Jala Soranda Gonti Tokban Pora Shinjir Lo Gonti Tokban Pora Gonti Tokban Pora Shinjir Lo Ichi Zhong Shen Chinda Japa Gu Shang Shu Shen de Puti Shin Gozir Mu Kyoji Shanba Chimbola Tenne Mi Cheta Terter Ja Chevir Monum Tapana Shenda Lachte Kyoki Matarta Lo Chiksam Jitis Tsempuni Transiris Kieverin Gerjan Loyang Gyabchik Neba Go Yang Tene Tsempuni Myan Me Kijang the Kieverin Gerjan Tir Kutsi Satyam Karav Jotami Pivarta Jignem Tarmumber Zubra San Gede Hadam Malas Banjoa Kangolong Shemi Chandam Nyamber Jaran Gero Tene Santi Gitans Wonger Gerpola Katsara Titse Japchumba Sunum Tenli Japchumba Sunum La Japchumba Sunum La Tene Gozir Gozir Mu Jora Pono Tartifan to San Lutu Mazapa Jisha, Titse Gozir Muk Man Tartifan to San Number Jorago Titsena Vumo Gozir Mugtena Tartifan to San Sai Nyana Murkarachi Mangbu Nang the Kunga Tetra Shamba the Nyajela Tene Kongo Longo Shima Niki Chang Jen the Ticket in Joa Nam Jarvar Shiba Go Yang Maon Jistin Kana Kipatan Vedme Kanjik Givi Le Meshepatan Magivi Le Shepatan Shepani Zonti Le Gimjela Matapatan Dope Lobro Yembatan Zundar Mavadam Chama Shepatan Sixer Mavadam Papa Chimbu Chular Kurandi Pala so believe she become Semsernam Gansung Gornesan Iberton in Jernagan Katchit Giv Shinin Dam Chadni Diligin Semson Tetala Yang Kurdi Tana Sekur Tubazamgi Yin Zamjigda Shansu Sangwa Sai Nyam Bola Chaus Sona Semson Tetak Gansung Gurnamber Mambale Churun Gero Diligin Katchit Simmer Chigbe Shansu Sangwa Sai Nyam Bola Kipe Tavadan Shamsaradan Topadan Nobadan Pudan Metodan Kudan Rumboche Natsudan Zapton Lasobe Nyungershena Tetak Maon Fkarva Chiston Shia Chagyatak La Yi Deva Pasum Zobala Long Shubran Gyoro Namjig Hip Sunum Tetak Zadni Minjik Tender Tiana Fkarva Gyarton Mombortak the Mi Gerpur Gerde Tsereptan Le Jimje Kier Namjigam Tam Chad Labra Chamber and Gero Tan Wonger Gerbo Shansu Sanwa Sai Yamboter Samji Mekipa Jut Malongwi Zumchir Gisto Laptene Semjam Nala Pamber Shiba Yeno Tina Chut Shansu Sanwa Namji Mdon the Yella Zone Zanla Getcher Jobber Shaw Tenitan Wonger Gerbe San Geland the Sora Zumba Jonden De Niki Tigle Chongra Mzad Mugutan Gachak Shansu Sanwa Chimbo Ja Chiston Shia Chogja Namji Tejan Shabi Zumchir Dan Shenla Ten Mdon the Getcher Jagnin Zanglung, Samson Nala Pamber of Jabago, Shansu Sanhua Tang Zangonger Gerbu Jondan de la Turk, Tijine, Tarmo Jerde, Tarmo Jerjan, Shamsarde, Songo, Dice, Shur Gene, Gerbo Chimbor, Devji, Ranrankertani, Jean de Kibi, Tarmo Jerjan, Jondan de la Durkato, Sordo, Zumba Jondan de Shansu Sanhua Sai, Yambukara, Chituma Mepane, Termolum Chimbo, Tabayana. Tartarian, Simpson Tate of German Money, Berlarian, Simjachimbo Kidney, Tamjibur Shibartarna, the Jimson Kang of Jondan de Ki, Dr. Namlatanda, Sorotini, Jondan de Gigarochimbo Dejala Katsara, Loso, Dr. Ketchadan, Tarta, Maun, Sada, Minro, Namla Pambi, Shansu was saying Yambo Mumji, Jikton Zamolan, the Kinchi Lam Gitni, Kinchi Lam Gitni. Git so. Lam Jivan. Lam Gitni Dikdiko, Zorba Simjan Namla. Tükseve çırtır cari çırki tavırnam tambrşa votini gerboçin burdejele sonra laqso jondan de daqçıq Sambrando John, the Gerbuchimbo de Jalaka Sarvation, so I say in Bokumkara Chimipan, Tartia Tikavarta, Chimambone Tartala Tikavarta, Semjan of Jury Mon Marzo Bana, so Jandi, the Konobi Semjan Namla Tiksavia Gumba Yenor, Larian Mao, Karachami Pina, the Tukin, Jin Chapter Mepram Zappa water. The chances of saying Yambo in Jitan Zan on the Tabjaton Shia Trukyalat in the Semjate, Jero Shipago, Gerbochimbo, chances of saying Yambo Trukchopanamni. Dear Narman said Homer and Jerry Chu Shadow, Martian Lembarnamna, dear Narman of Warwadan, Dinger and Jerry Chu Shadow, no be Lober and Barnamna, dear Narman, Vega than Nurbanam Sekiwi, Chu Shadow, Six of Mavanamna, the Narman Kur Panson, the Sojan Tapper Jerry Chu Shadow, Jan Grande Barnamna, dear Narman, Siemi Paradan. Kalar ma kapshon chu shadow control barbar namla tir narman zig murdig badan wombo kyonjin den gerwi chu shadow serna jan namla tir narman rungando pi tokto makerwer gerwi chu shadow zapton wagmet shobar namla tir narman trishkum dan matpa nachin de gerwi chu shadow Kung dundut rungun shepar namna tir narman de semdan ngachagdan nyumbok zirni sem purin gerwi chu shadow pa ma la nimgur mshepar namla tir narman de rangshon kamgir no pen chevrin gerwi chu shadow ruhlong da naksir nam mir chabar namla tir narman sem nyumbok nar montir gizirnin chevrin gerwi chu shadow Pama Gudan, Choni Suba, Hamadan, Payadan, Maya Namgi, Webchik, Narchu Shebar Namla, Tir Narman, Chiksin Giptrapa, So, Tongchusin, Gervi, Gerim Yungichu Shadow, Jardia Soki Simchin, Zon Shebar Namla, Tir Narman, Sheri, Susurun, Turvan Gervichu Shadow, Kumchuk Sonar Kuran Debar Namla, Tir Narman, Noadan, Wombadan, Kubanam Gervichu Shadow. Chula Nichu Shetni, Ranjit Nargervar Namla, Tir Narman Gansungoni, Sahtan Matravan Gervichu Shadow, Gendin Girzel, Nam, Torlok Shepar Namla, Tir Narman, Karvi Varta, Nyarachtan, Matravan Gervichu Shadow, Sambar Jupir Dubala, Cuba dan Gender Namla, Nichu Shepar Namla, Tir Narman, Shursungo Sahtan, the Taran Mangervichu Shadow, Chetsan dan May Simpson of Chabar Namlam, Sonjik Chupar Shepe, Tir Narman, the Hun Jan Chester Sapa, Jenda Rani, Tester Yamsam Yon Gervichu Shadow, Satam Charja, Yondum Rara Namla, Tir Narman, Dapchak dan Jansen and Jerne, Preshkums, Preshkum Yamsam Yon Gervichu Shadow, Janji Nur, Surgeon Mayember, Low, Per, Shopar Namla, Tir Narman, Revando talk the member Gervichu Shadow, Narger dan Ranton Chevar Namla, Tir Narman, Chango dan Rig member Gervichu Shadow, Chamadan, Chuslon Shepar Namla, Tir Narman, Cheme Pater, Chevjachan and Gervichu Shadow, Lober Tobar Namla, Tir Narman, Yenrang Takup the Kiveran Gervichu Shadow, the Esther, Zamolanga, Semjan Namla, Ranga, Ling Yoksum Latin, Digba Magi, Shepir Narman, Jevayan, Jarton Mumber and Jero, the Ton of Dibirgon, Tambago, the Zamolanga, Semjan Namdi, Ligier Narman, Mu, Cabra Mandrave, Shantusan was high in Yambu, Tab Jarton Tomalaften, the Don Rembership, I know, Semjan Namjikun, the Ranga Lenium, some new name, Tara Nyarian is Lone, Kara, Tonshir Givarte, Tarika Mamchizo, Tina Gerbo Chimbo, Chochak Semjan Ted of Chongada, Yerkam Ted of Chongada, Semjan Namji. Zenda fleur magic bershago, Simpson nam sim zenda fleur magic bershago, Gerbo Chimbo G, Terkut Tourje, Simba Chi, Odonim Chima, Jerjan, Shak Thermogen, Raganes, Son, Say Number Sermonum Jim Dole, Zawalang Simpson Namgi, Lerno Tambi Legote, Jibago.
Wow, that's a lot of content that we have to cover today. This much. It took me about 10 minutes to read it, and then let's get into the actual teaching. Ksitigarbha Sutra. Previously, we've already covered the story of the woman whose name is Bright Eyes, Prabha Chaksa, that's her name. And her mother passed away, and she was quite heartbroken. Then she encountered an arhat who told her about, whom gave her teachings on karma, and told her her mother's whereabouts. And then later, her mother was reborn in the family of her servant, and she could speak after 3 days of birth. She was certain that boy was definitely the rebirth of her mother. And her mother said that she can only live for 13 years and then reborn in hell realm or reborn in the lower realms again. Even after she took rebirth after lower realms, she will be reborn in the families of low castes. After witnessing this woman, Bright Eyes, made the vast aspiration. May her mother leave the 3 lower realms. May all sentient beings depart or never be reborn in the 3 lower realms. So she made this vast aspiration to benefit all sentient beings. At the beginning, she had this focal point, or she paid sole attention to her mother. She really wanted to alleviate her mother away from suffering. But after noticing that it is not only her mother is suffering in the lower realms, she then generated the bodhicitta, so that all sentient beings may be alleviated from the suffering of the 3 lower realms. I think we're the same. Whenever our family members, our parents or relatives pass away, at the time of their passing, we may feel great sorrow. And at that time, we can probably generate bodhicitta or generate a good wish for them. But then later we can also make the grand wish that may all sentient beings attain liberation. May all sentient beings attain the fruition of Tathagata. So the woman, Bright Eyes, thought of all the sentient beings of the lower realms. In fact, not just the lower realms, but all the 6 realms of the cyclic existence. This is quite important to make aspiration. With such kind of power of aspiration, her mother attained liberation. And since she is the previous life of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, we can see that that's how the merit of eradication and realization increased of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. So let's continue to look at the sutra. It says that having taken this solemn vow, Prabhachaksa, the woman whose name is Bright Eyes, heard pure lotus eyes. Tathagata says to her, Prabhachaksa, you have great compassion. It is extremely virtuous of you to take such a great vow on your mother's behalf. So the Tathagata said that you have such a great compassion and then you made such a great vow. It's quite important to make great vows. Usually people make very tiny vows to wish for their own or personal health, longevity, or their own appearance, beauty, and safety, and so on. Those kind of vows are not really supreme. They are virtuous, or they're good vows, or they're good wishes. But after such kind of small vows or small aspirations, you can try to open up your heart. Slowly, you'll be able to accustom to grand vows, and then you will think of all sentient beings instead of just thinking about yourself. If you were to train yourself to think that this is a wrong way, a very limited way of making vows, I need to generate or I need to make vows for all sentient beings, this would be more natural for you to make such kind of wish. And then the Tathagata continued to say that I contemplated that your mother's future and see that after reaching 13 years of age, she will forsake this current form and be reborn as a brahmachari, the religious cultivator, with a lifespan of 100 100 years. And then after the end of this life, your mother will then be reborn into the Ashoka, the no sorrow heaven, having a lifespan of countless kalpas that cannot be calculated. Afterwards, she will achieve Buddhahood and deliver as many human beings and devas as all the grains of sands in the Ganges River. We can see through the practice of virtuous deeds and through the power of a grand bodhicitta, it really benefited her mother. According to Bodhisattva Charyavatara, it says that the heart of bodhicitta is like the fire at the end of age, that is so grand that it could burn out and completely destroy all the negative deeds. Look at her mother. When she was alive, she killed so many sentient beings, the fish and crabs and turtles and lots of the fingerlings and all of those. So she killed many sentient beings. On top of that, she had lots of wrong view. But because this woman, her daughter, generated a bodhicitta with this kind of, with the blessings of the grand bodhicitta, all of her mother's karmic force dissipates. Therefore, the power or the merit of bodhicitta is indeed quite grand. And bodhicitta is indeed the only medicine that could cure whatever afflictions and disease that you have in this life and lifetimes. In the great Hebrew Sutra, where it says that this bodhicitta is the most supreme, just like the Agata medicine. Agata medicine is the one that could heal all kinds of sickness. It can dispel all kinds of sickness and give happiness. In this lifetime, if we were to have bodhicitta in our mind stream, this person would indeed be extremely happy, because majority of our suffering comes from selfishness. 99% of that comes from selfishness. If we were to have bodhicitta, then this person must be very happy all the time, very joyful at all times, no sorrow, no weeping, because we don't really see lots of people who weep for others. Usually they would weep for themselves. So if you want to gain happiness for this life and lifetimes, then you need to generate bodhicitta. On the other hand, if we were to practice bodhicitta and make aspiration to benefit all sentient beings, in fact, you will gain such great merit. So, if we were to practice on others' behalf, to practice or generate virtuous deeds or practice virtuous deeds on others' behalf, it could again help ourselves to again benefit as well. There are different sutras or shastras have different views on how many percentage, so to speak, that you would receive for yourself if you were to practice virtuous deeds for others, but there's definitely going to be benefits. Otherwise, you can see how, if you don't believe, you can see how the daughter practiced for her mother, and both of them received the benefits of merit. And then the Buddha said to Samadhi Shvara Raja, saying the Arhat who delivered. What's the Arhat's name? Did we learn his name? I think his name means liberating sentient beings with merit. You're all wearing masks. I don't understand your mumbles nowadays.
那么他应该是那个就是前面怎么讲的？ 在哪？意外让复度众生。我好像翻译的是依靠这个福德来度众生，就是但这个也可以这样说吧。
My translation of that Arhat's name is liberating sentient beings by merit, by great merit. Anyhow, the Arhat who delivered Prabha Chaksan, that's the woman whose name is Bright Eyes, onto the path of enlightenment, is now Aksha Yamati Bodhisattva, the inexhaustible mind Bodhisattva. So her mother is now Moksha Bodhisattva, and Prabha Chaksan is Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. In different sutras, such as the Sutra on the Sutra of Good Kalpa, it is stated that so and so made the aspiration in front of different Tathagata, including Shakyamuni Buddha. From different sutras, it is stated where Shakyamuni Buddha made the aspiration. And he talks about his initial aspiration. So when Madhikalyayana asked the Buddha, when was the first time that you made aspiration in front of another Tathagata, and who was that Tathagata you made the first inspiration, first aspiration? And then the answer sometimes goes to one Buddha and the other times goes to another Buddha. And the Buddha then stated that in fact I would state different aspiration in front of different sentient beings. There's a deep meaning behind that. In front of different sentient beings, the Buddha made different initial aspiration. This is quite meaningful. So the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva in front of different sentient beings or in front of different Tathagatas made different aspiration, and then made the innumerable numbers of aspirations to liberate sentient beings. So wherever we are, wherever we go, we should make different aspirations. If we were to see a Buddha statue, if we were to see some grand masters and so on, we should make aspirations. And slowly, with the accumulation of the aspirations, the merit would finally gather and become the ocean of merits. So through countless kalpas of time, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva has demonstrated such profound compassion. He has made the same oath of rendering deliverance to all sentient beings as many times as there are grains of sand in the Ganges River. In the future, there may be men or women who do not perform any virtuous deeds, who only committed malicious deeds, even do not believe in karma. So the kind of sentient beings who only committed all kinds of malicious deeds. And this kind of beings who lie and indulge in perverted lusts, who always use foul language and speak ill of people behind their backs, or who defame Mahayana practitioners, these kind of people who committed the various offenses will certainly fall into hell. If they encounter a virtuous person who persuades them to seek refuge in the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva in the time to snap one's fingers, which is a very short period of time, a momentary period of time, and then these sinful beings will be liberated from the karmic retributions of their deeds and avoid the realms of suffering. So once this kind of malicious person who practices all kinds of evil deeds, who would encounter a virtuous person, a virtuous friend, and guide them to seek refuge in Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, then in a short moment of taking refuge in Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, that person's karmic retributions will be liberated and will be liberated from or avoid the realms of suffering. Therefore, it is quite important to try to tell others and persuade others to take refuge in Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, seek refuge and pay homage and praise Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. The merit is quite great. I've read some of the stories of practicing on Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva up on or with the teachings of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. There was once in the Song Dynasty someone who died and then was in the bardo and then encountered, they went to see the Yama. So at after seeing the Yama, when Yama asked him about his virtuous deeds and malicious deeds and asked him whether he had committed anything virtuous or had done anything virtuous, he said that, well, I have chanted the name of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. And Yama then said, wow, you've done such great merit. Then you can go back. You don't, would you like to go back to a human realm? Maybe. So at that time, Yama then asked if this person's life has already ended or should be ended, and then they said no. So the Yama said, maybe before you go, you would like to take a tour in Hell Realm. This person then went there and saw the immeasurable, inexhaustible amount of suffering in the hot Hell Realm, as well as other realms of hell, other different levels of hell. And he even recognized that some of his ancestors are suffering in Hell Realm without any moment of happiness or at any moment of ease at all. So after that, he then saw a burning bed that some Shramanas are also suffering a lot because they didn't practice diligently. Rather, they enjoyed the property that belongs to the Sangha, so they were suffering on this burning bed, burning rack. And then he saw a beautiful place called the Greenhouse. It's really beautiful outside, and it has a beautiful garden, jewel trees and flowers and fruits, and a beautiful palace. And there's no suffering in there at all. And that is because that's the place people make offering to Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. And even there are people who had never had genuine faith to Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, but they would live over there in that greenhouse that is devoid of suffering. And there is another place called the place of merit, where people create lots of negative deeds, but because of the blessings of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, they did not suffer in the three lower realms, but they would stay there until the birth of Maitreya Buddha. So because Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva already promised Shakyamuni Buddha, saying that if sentient beings would supplicate to him or praise him, and then that being would not fall into the lower realms, even if they have lots of debt or a karmic debt, then he created such a place for these kind of beings. After this person went back to human realm, and then he told people about what he see. So we can see that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva indeed have incredible merit and blessings. It could let people avoid the realm of suffering, even in a flicker of or a snap of one's fingers. Sentient beings, if they can only chant the name of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, they can avoid lots of the sufferings. But people's karma is inconceivable. There are people who created lots of negative karma, but if they were to take refuge in Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, they won't fall into the three lower realms, and they can gain the merit of celestial beings. Or maybe this kind of people with lots of sins would be able to be reborn in the fields of merit, or in the house of merit that is probably still in the Bardo period rather than in hell realm. The karma of sentient beings are inconceivable, and our concepts are very limited. Our concepts about space, about time is very limited, and what we've perceived is very limited and very narrow. Our understanding and what we can comprehend is indeed very, very narrow. Therefore, our world is very narrow, the world we can perceive. For example, lights. When we use machines to differentiate the different spectrum inside light, there are full spectrum all the way from the red infrared lights and the UV lights and all of those. But what we can perceive with our eyes are very, very little. That is why the Buddha said in the Samadhi Sutra that eyes, nose, ears, and tongue cannot be considered as a valid cognition. So if we cannot think, if we cannot see, do not think that is incorrect. In fact, what I notice is that worldly beings nowadays have this kind of tendency that they do not believe in religion, and they would consider whatever religion talks about is superstition, but they would believe in science, even if they don't understand the things that's taught in science. So people sometimes have lots of bias towards religion, towards Buddhism, but to science, they would believe it very blindly. For example, when we talk about astronomy, when we talk about the different light years and so many stars and planets in this universe, they cannot grasp it with their mind. They would consider that as inconceivable. But they would never consider that is untrue. However, in Buddhism, another example is when we talk about time, when we talk about how the earth has existed for 4 billion, 5 billion years and so on, we cannot fathom such kind of timeline of billions of years. But because science said so, then people would buy it blindly. In Buddhism, we talk about a 3,000-fold world as well, and different kalpas as well. But people would consider that as a superstition. Is that right? I think mainly because lots of people had never really studied religion at a young age. Nowadays, people would take lots of urban myth as religion, but that is untrue. Actually, we really need to use analysis, and we really need to contemplate. Lots of things people consider untrue, and lots of people have this kind of inappropriate way of contemplating. For Buddhists, I think we really need to be very proficient with Buddhism courses. At the same time, we should understand the wrong views and all different kinds of wrong views that worldly people talk about nowadays. In this way, then we will be able to know how to communicate to them. We will be able to know how to resolve their wrong views, because there are a group of people who have wrong views only because they don't understand, and not necessarily they really have the view of of the materialism or nihilism, such as Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. He said that you need the spiritual or virtuous friend to lead you onto the path, and this is important. So if every one of us can be a virtuous friend and lead the ones with the wrong view to to study Buddhism, and then in one moment you become a virtuous friend, and you can then also, for example, if you're sitting in the bus and you can say that, would you like to eat some of this, and then you can ask, well, what's your name? Do you want to take a look at this Ksitigarbha Sutra? So that was one aspect of it. And then it says that if they would sincerely seek refuge, pay homage, praise Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, make offerings of incense, fabric, various jewels, food, and other items. So previously we talked about the beings who made lots of negative, who had lots of wrong views, and if they were to arouse a momentary faith, a momentary take a momentary refuge in Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. And over here it talks about to have great confidence in Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, such as in Larunga when we have the Dharma assembly of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, we would pile up all the fruit that would drown the statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva within. The fruits and offerings are so high, they're like the Mount Meru. So such kind of merit would be that people will be reborn into the heavens for trillions of kalpas and enjoy great happiness, even if they exhausted their blessings in heaven and have to be reborn into human realm. And then for hundreds of thousands of kalpas, they will often be reborn as kings, so such as the celestial kings and so on. Therefore, by making this kind of, or by practicing such kind of virtuous deeds is indeed quite necessary. As I stated earlier, I told you guys that why I never really understood why we should have Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's Dharma assembly, but not the Chairmanziks or the Manjushris, only Ksitigarbha and the Samadabhadra Dharma assembly. But later on, I realized that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is very important, crucial for the beings in degenerated age, especially nowadays. There's a famine and war and conflicts, so this is quite important to supplicate to Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. On top of that, because beings nowadays have lots of desire, they need this, they need that, so Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, as the one who would grant the wishes for anyone who supplicate him, then we should supplicate and pray to Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and chant the name and the long mantra. In fact, when Ponso Rinpoche was alive, I really didn't know how to chant the long mantra. There are lots of practitioners, they're very good at this, actually. I asked another Khenpo, and he said he doesn't know how to chant the long mantra either because it's too long. But the merit is indeed quite great, because the 10 chakras of Ksitigarbha Sutra is of great merit. And then over here, continue to say that Samadhi Shrava Raja Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva possess such unimaginable divine power to render extensive benefits to all sentient beings. You and the other bodhisattvas must memorize the sutra and help to spread it far and wide. After reading it in Chinese, I realized this is not included in Tibetan language. I'm not sure if people would read it in Tibetan. Maybe there will be, maybe not. Tibetan language are only read by the Tibetan people. But I think it is quite necessary to spread this teaching wide. And in the Chinese, in the mainland area, there are many different versions as well, and there are the translations of the English translation, Japanese, and other different versions. So it is quite necessary to spread this teaching with different languages, with different methods. This is quite necessary. And there are practitioners who made the aspiration to compile this into commentary. For those of you who want to make it into written commentaries or scripts, I think it's or transcripts, I think it's quite necessary to. It's quite necessary to be concise as well. Don't just rush to get it out, but try to make sure the content is correct. Sometimes I think maybe because of time and people don't really write down everything. There are people nowadays, I realize that you don't really write down everything and it's too concise. But if it were too concise, if the transcript is too concise and too condensed, then you might lose some of the very important link words. And it may appear to be very odd. Therefore, I suggest it's that you should contemplate upon this. I noticed some of the transcripts are quite good because they would use some very very vague language to describe it, and it could be fine, but it is the best to be concise about the language, because once you write it down in words, it will spread quite widely. And for those people who are translating it into other language, I think this is quite important. There are times maybe people don't understand they're not really familiar with the certain language habits, then you can adjust accordingly. Sometimes it's necessary. So though we don't have many people or as many people listening to this teaching right now, but slowly we can spread it wide and far. And I remember that around 30 years ago, I was giving teachings over here at the Samye Stupa over here, and the people who were listening to my classes were only about 6 or 7, sometimes 7 and 8, but I never really given up, and I've tried very diligently until today. So sometimes when we propagate the Dharma, there are favorable conditions, and sometimes there's all the unfavorable conditions. Anyhow, in the West, people usually talk about never give up. They really admire the personalities of perseverance. In different universities or speech given by directors, given by presidents and so on, they always talk about persistence. So I think persistence is one of the most important value that we should keep in our mind, and we should not give up. So from now on, we should try to propagate this sutra whenever you have the opportunity. And then Samadhi Shrava Raja addressed the Buddha, saying, "World-honored one, please do not worry. Through your divine power, we, the trillions of Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, will certainly be able to extensively expound the sutra in Jambudvipa for the benefit of all sentient beings." The beings in Jambudvipa will definitely gain great benefits.
所以他这里这个当时地自在王菩萨的话呢， 也是他跟一起就是成千上万的这个菩萨摩诃萨，他们呢就是也是依靠佛陀的加持来，就是发愿，就是对这个世间的众生呢，就是会这个光弘这个法门啊，就是我们这个正法来利益众生是最重要的，而且地藏经来利益众生呢也很重要。就像那个大集经里面也是说啊，就是说是这个盲明示道在
Over here, then the Samadhi Shrava Raja Bodhisattva addressed the Buddha saying, "World-honored one, please do not worry. Through your divine power, we trillions of Bodhisattva Mahasattvas will certainly be able to extensively expound the Sutra in Jambudvipa for the benefit of all sentient beings." It is quite important to expound this Dharma, to spread this Dharma. According to Mahasamgata Sutra, it says that for the sentient beings who has lost the correct path, we shall benefit them with the wisdom eye of the correct Dharma, so that they will be able to they will be able to alleviate from suffering and attain happiness. Eventually, they will be able to attain full enlightenment. So at that time, Samadhi Shrava Raja said that we have so many bodhisattvas here, and with the divine power, with the blessings of the Buddha, we will definitely be able to propagate this teaching. So please do not worry. We will also make the same aspiration, just like Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. In this lifetime and lifetimes, we will propagate the teaching of Ksitigarbha's teaching, and it will definitely benefit all sentient beings. So after concluding his response, Samadhi Shrava Raja respectfully withdrew with his palms joined. This chapter is the chapter that started from Samadhi Shrava Raja, and then now he concluded his response, and then he withdrew. And then at the time, the four directional Devarajas rose from their seats with their palm joints and jointed and respectfully asked the Buddha, "World-honored one, since Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva took this great vow countless times over countless kalpas, why has he now not completed the deliverance of all sentient beings?" So the four Devarajas have the question that, well, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva made so many countless vows over the countless kalpas, but how come that he has not completed the deliverance of all sentient beings? Well, we hope that the world-honored one will explain this to us. So they're saying that, well, he already spent so much time to make so many vows, but he's continuing to make those vows. Which reminds me of a story of my uncle. After I got ordained, once my uncle stayed with me overnight, and after he went to bed and woke up, he saw me at 12 o'clock midnight, and he said that, "You're still up? You're still studying? It's time to sleep. Don't disturb me from my sleep." He really doesn't like me. He's the elder brother of my father, and I call him uncle. So he went to bed really early, and he woke up and saw me still reading a book. He then felt really annoyed, saying that, "You're still reading books? What's the point of this? There's no end to you reading the books." Over here, the four Dhamarajas have the same kind of feeling. I think they're saying that the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva has already made the vows already made aspirations for so long and so many vows, and he's still making vows. What does that mean? And then the Buddha said to the four Devarajas of the four directions, saying that excellent, excellent. So saying that great question. For the benefit of you and that of the present and future devas, humans, and other beings, I will explain how Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva compassionately delivers all sentient beings, all suffering sentient beings through expedient means on the path of life and death in Jambuipa of Saha world. So this is a good question. I find that good questions could lead to good answers, of course, if the speaker or if the one to answer the question is full of wisdom. Of course, if either sides are not wise, then it's a different story. But if it's a good question and then the speaker or the one to answer the question is wise, then you'll be able to get an excellent question. Excellent answer. I think that lots of our Dharma teachers as well as practitioners, you should open up your mind to have more ideas and more open-minded ways of explaining your ideas. For example, when I went, in fact, I went to many schools. I've given teachings in many schools. It is that one school in Jerusalem really made an impression to me because all the students, they're very smart. Just by looking at them, I had the feeling that they would ask excellent questions. Some of the schools, their students would dress up really nicely. Once I went to a school of stewardesses, and at the beginning, all of them looked really good in their costume, in their school uniforms. But then after a little while, during my speech, all of them fell asleep, and I barely could finish my speech. If all the schools, however, if the students are like the ones in Jerusalem, all the students are full of wisdom, you should be able to notice it, and then you will be able to give them excellent answers, or answers full of wisdom. Just like over here, the Buddha felt really happy and said excellent to the questions, because those questions composed would be very beneficial. And over here, the four Devarajas said, then indeed, world honored one, we will be delighted to listen. We are so looking forward to hearing your answers. We really want to listen to your answers. And then the Buddha said to the Devarajas of the four directions, from the countless kalpas in the past to now, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva has been delivering sentient beings. So indeed, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva has been making great vows for kalpas, and his aspirations has not exhausted yet. His vow, his aspiration was to liberate all sentient beings in the 6 realms. If the hell realm do not exhaust, then his aspiration would not exhaust. And he still not completed his vow. He sees that in the future countless kalpas, the undelivered sentient beings' karma continue to creep and entangle, tapping them deeper and deeper into samsara. If the sentient beings' ignorance are not eradicated, and then the karma will not be eradicated. If the karma is not eradicated, then the afflictions won't be eradicated, and if the afflictions won't be eradicated, the cyclic existence of birth and death won't be eradicated. And because of this kind of ongoing habit, then all sentient beings would stay in this cyclic existence and suffering this samsara. For this reason, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva continued to make his vows again and again. Just like great masters domestically or internationally, they would continuously to invest their effort in different beneficial projects, such as building schools and building monasteries, and continuously to make those those beneficial activities is bigger and wider. And over here, then it says that.
我们这个不管是出家人弘扬佛法也好，居士弘扬佛法的话，我觉得呢，最根本的是
also because of his great compassion that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva instructs and transforms sentient beings through countless expedient means in Jambudvipa of the Saha world. Over here, this is quite important. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva has thousands of millions and billions of expedient means, the skillful means to teach sentient beings. This is quite important. It is not that we're talking about the expedient means of relative means or absolute means to guide sentient beings. It is not really that. It is that you have to teach according to what sentient beings really care. Rather than I notice some of you have to speak to their heart. Rather than those, I notice some of the monastics when they give teachings to the lay practitioners and propagate to the laity group, they do not really understand their afflictions and their habitual patterns, and they only talk about the Madhyamika, Prasangika, and Tantrika school talks so and so, and they would just talk and talk about the things that they care rather than look at the expressions of the audience, whether they like it or not. Some of the very traditional old temples, when they go and teach in the West, they don't really look at the circumstances that they're teaching in. They only read and read, and after reading, they'll just leave. On one hand, yes, it's a good tradition, but this is the way that gurus would teach in the past. But if we only adapt on that format, it is very difficult to benefit the sentient beings. So it is quite important to know what the audience want to listen. There are people, I'm sure there will be people who would go to the West and propagate the Dharma. So I really encourage you to not use your Eastern way of thinking to teach the Westerners. Otherwise, nobody would really listen to you. I especially notice that lots of people in the West, they have a very different sense of humor. Last time when I played the video of Pangsogpa Rinpoche, there was one point that I feel there's nothing funny about it, but the audience were laughing nonstop. So it really has something to do with the different beings' habitual patterns and their afflictions and all of these. So to propagate Dharma, we really need to understand their value system and what they think. It is one particular circumstances or society would cultivate one type of particular people. So we really need to try to understand. This is with skillful means. Over here, the Buddha said to the four Devarajas, saying that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva teaches in such a way. If Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva encounters those who murder and kill, he will teach them the karmic retribution of shortened lifespan and untimely death. For lifetimes, they will receive such kind of karmic consequences from killing and murdering. That is shortened lifespan and untimely death. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva teach differently or emphasize differently to the different sentient beings. Nowadays, we see that the karma of killing is increasing in this world than ever. According to Bodhisattva Bhumi Sutra, it says that the true cause of longevity is not harming the others. And this is the true reason of long long lifespan. But people nowadays would practice the exact opposite. They would kill the other beings in order to nourish their own body. And this is quite horrifying because when thinking about it, if your life were to be taken by the others, there's no way that you would wish the best for the others. So according to Mahaprajna Paramita Shastra, it says that out of all the treasures, the most precious is the life of beings. And people would forsake their wealth in order to receive long lifespan, and not the other way around. But we can see that nowadays sometimes it's different because there are people who work to death in order to earn money. But that is very rare. The beings in this world, even as tiny as an ant, would cherish his or her life, would cherish its life. If one were to kill to extend his or her lifespan, it is not possible. They would only receive the karmic retribution of shortened lifespan and untimely death or lots of illness. Lots of people who have lots of illness, many of which are the consequences of this lifetime or previous lifetimes' karma of killing. People would say that I must have accumulated lots of merits before, but why am I having... in fact, I have already accumulated lots of merits. I've done lots of virtuous deeds. Why am I still getting sick? But you should contemplate it in such a way that maybe not this lifetime, but maybe you have killed many beings in previous lifetimes. I think lots of people, before they had faith, they ate lots of, or they killed lots of fish and prawns and those things, just like the mother of bright eyes. Then you should definitely confess. And then the next one says, to those who steal, he will explain them the karmic retribution of poverty and destitute. This is karma. Whatever you give others, you will receive such. For example, if you were to take other people's wealth, you will eventually lose your wealth as well. If you were to take others' life, you will receive such kind of karmic consequences as well. Whatever you give to others, you will receive such consequences and experience that yourself. For those who indulge in lust, he will teach them the karmic retribution of rebirth as pigeons, peacocks, and other birds. In China, usually it is considered that those Chinese ducks are symbols of love, and that's a folk way, or the traditional culture would consider in such a way because they're monogamous. They often vowed to die together. That's why usually if one does not live, the other would also die. So they live as couples. But it is because they have lots of lust for the other. In the sixth realm, in the painting of the six realms, snake is the symbol of anger, and pig is the symbol of ignorance, and bird is the symbol of lust or greed. So that's the fruition of lust. If he meets those with foul mouths, he will explain to them the karmic retributions of bickering relatives and disruptive quarrels within their families. And to those who slander, he will teach them the karmic retributions of being born mute or suffering from tongue sores. Nowadays, there are people who would get the mouth cancer or tongue cancer, their whole mouth would be full of sores, covered by sores. It's quite pitiful, and that's the karmic retribution of foul mouth in a previous life. To those who slander, he will teach the karmic retribution of being born. For those who has hatred or are vengeful, he will explain them the karmic retribution of having ugly hunchback or suffering from other deformities. According to Madhyamika Avatara, it says that if one were to have great anger, great hatred, he would be reborn as would be reborn having an ugly appearance, and the wisdom of distinguishing right from wrong would also be taken away. So they would not have any wisdom of differentiating the reasonable actions and unreasonable actions. Because under the mind of hatred and anger, one would lose all his ability to control oneself. So for people with lots of hatred would be reborn as ugly people or as a person with lots of deformities or being very weak in terms of physical, in terms of their physical appearance, and eventually they, and also because when they are under the influence of anger, they would lose their wisdom to differentiate right from wrong. Therefore, they would also suffer from the consequences of not having any wisdom to differentiate right from wrong in the next lifetimes. So the mind of suffering is indeed very scary. For this reason, the ones with hatred would be reborn as scorpions and poisonous snakes and so on, because hatred and aggression is full of poison. And then the next one says that if he encountered those who are miserly, he will teach the karmic retribution of things going against their wishes. People with the sense of lacking would constantly feel that they cannot find any favorable things, such as a favorable class, a favorable house, a favorable job, a favorable position, a favorable companion, or favorable school and work. So there's a lot of suffering that comes from not getting what they want, not getting what people want. And that is because people have never made offerings to the noble ones or give to the ones of lesser fortune. Over here it talks about 23 types of karmic retribution. And when we look at how Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva benefits sentient beings and give this kind of teachings, we should really look inwardly and think about if we have such kind of aggression or such a kind of miser, and how we can work with it. In order to, in fact, to work with our afflictions is extremely important, because it's not easy, but we still should have ways to work with it. As a Buddhist, once we understand this kind of teachings, it's not difficult. I think for those of you, you probably have a better understanding of the language, but it is quite important for you to put this into practice and to change yourself, to transform yourself, to work with your own afflictions. This is quite important. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how much you understand the language. Let's look at the scholars and scientists. I often see that lots of the scientists of physics, of cosmology, they understand the rules of all phenomena, especially quantum physics. And those quantum physicists, they completely understand that all Dharma is like a dream and illusion. But what does it do to them? Nothing, because they do not use such understanding to work with their afflictions. instructions when the Buddha was giving the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, and the main reason or the main use of that is for us to work with our own three poisons, and that's the goal. So throughout the practice, if you were to only understand it in terms of the theory and doesn't work with you, then it is just like how the Gautamapas used to say that between the Dharma and the practitioner, there is a huge gap that you can fit in a whole horse. If it was a horse before, then it must be a car, right? Therefore, it is quite important to use all the things that we've learned into our practice. For example, over here we've learned that what is the karmic retribution of hatred and aggression, what's the karmic retribution of slandering the Dharma. If we were to contemplate each of them one by one, then that differentiates us from the scholars, from the scientists, because they only stop at the level of understanding it. And they would understand, the scientists, they understand that all phenomena is based on one's mind. And the phenomena is, there's no solid existence of all phenomena. There are people who understand that, but it doesn't make any difference to them. The conjurer could conjure a woman out of nothing, but still have lots of lust towards that woman and create karmic retribution. Similarly, we have to practice upon the teachings we've studied and work with our afflictions and our self-grasping. Then it is meaningful. In a short period of time, we will make great progress. So after listening to this teaching, I really hope that you can transform yourself, transform your life, and then we can transform samsara as well. Otherwise, if we only stay on the level of theory, then we're just like the scholars. We're no other than them. It doesn't really make any difference to our mind stream at all. Theory is theory, and practitioner is practitioner. There's no connection between the two. And then when we die, we would die like the scientists, just like Einstein, who made a great contribution for the humankind, for the mankind. But when he died, his death is definitely not as good as an old practitioner who probably have no idea about science at all. So the difference between us and others is that we are learning to eradicate our own self-grasping, and that is how Buddhism differs from the others. Buddhism is very inclusive, and Buddhism gives prediction and teachings on the future as well, in a very subtle way. The other day, I've quoted from the Samyukta Agama Sutra, and that teaching was quoted from the auto commentary of Madhyamika Avatara. It says that even if the whole world fights against of me, I would not fight against the whole world. And whatever the world would consider is true, I would consider that as true as well. I would comply with the worldly view. If the worldly view do not think it's true, then I would comply and not admit that it's true. So this is a very profound kind of teaching. The Buddha has already attained omniscience, and he completely sees the previous life as well as the later. He completely understands the cosmos, and he said that if the worldly view admits that certain things are true, then I would comply. This, as Buddhists, we can say that. So sometimes we have to have a very inclusive way of thinking. We don't necessarily need to understand all branches of a theory. We need to understand the basic or the core point. According to Einstein, that he said that if there's one religion that would comply to the modern science, that would be Buddhism. I quoted from him before. So to these studies of karma, if we do not use these teachings on our own mind stream, then it doesn't matter how many classes you've learned, it doesn't make much of a difference. It won't be very meaningful. So thinking in such a way that I should not slander others, I should not be foul-mouthed, it won't be beneficial for myself as well as my retinues for lifetimes. If people have lots of slandering karma, then they could lose their tongue or use different iron nails or iron rings to put on their tongues, just like lots of the Africans do to decorate their tongues. Sometimes we really need to look at the karmic retribution. I think we'll stop here to avoid people fall asleep in the class. So let's stop here now.